The last morning in the only building she had ever called home felt colder than the October air waiting outside. Emma sat across from the administrator whose office lights flickered with that familiar, irritating hum, the kind that made the moment feel more sterile than it already was. The woman's practiced expression revealed nothing, not grief nor pride, only the routine resignation of someone who had walked other 18-year-olds out of the system thousands of times before. Emma accepted the folder, its thin weight mocking the 21 years she had spent growing up behind those beige walls. Inside were papers stamped by strangers, records typed by people who had never known her favorite books, secret fears, or the way she stared out windows imagining families she would never meet. But then, buried behind the documents, she found the envelope, her name written in careful cursive, its edges softly browned with age. Her pulse spiked. Inside, a brass key trembled against her fingers and a note whispered a message she didn't understand. "Use it when you're ready. The tractor knows." Those 5 words sliced through the numbness that had carried her through the morning. She suddenly felt the weight of possibility, terrifying, unexpected, and strangely hopeful. That night, long after the building had gone quiet, Emma lay in her narrow bed staring at the same ceiling tiles she had memorized since childhood. The key glinted faintly in the low glow from the street lamp outside, as if urging her not to ignore it. She turned it over again and again, wondering who had held it last, someone who loved her, someone who feared for her, or someone trying to leave her breadcrumbs through a life they couldn't stay to witness. By sunrise, her suitcase was zipped, the faded yellow blanket folded carefully on top. She walked past the common room where younger kids watched cartoons with detached ease, pretending departures didn't matter. Outside, the air bit at her cheeks as she stepped into a world she'd only ever watched from behind fences and supervised outings. Her entire life fit inside a single duffel, and yet the key seemed heavier than everything else combined. She walked to the public library, a haven she had always escaped to, and searched for Hillrest Farm. When the map finally revealed it, a forgotten patch of land 60 miles north, her heart thudded with a strange conviction. She didn't know what waited there, but she knew she had to go. The key had survived decades for a reason, and Emma, for the first time, had something worth following. The bus ride north felt like crossing into a different lifetime. She pressed her forehead to the window as the city blurred into stretches of farmland, the air growing clearer, the sky opening wider. Maplewood greeted her with the quiet charm of a town untouched by hurry, brick storefronts, a hardware store older than its paint, a diner that smelled of sizzling bacon and warm coffee. Inside, Rosie, the silver-haired owner, noticed the key the moment Emma placed it on the counter. Her expression shifted from politeness to something closer to recognition, or maybe dread. She told Emma about the farm. Abandoned for years, forgotten by everyone except the land itself. And when Emma hesitated, Rosie offered a ride, her voice softening with a sincerity Emma wasn't used to. The pickup truck rattled along a gravel road swallowed by weeds until the farmhouse appeared like a ghost stepping out of memory. Emma stepped down into silence so thick it felt sacred. The barn sagged but stood firm against time's cruelty, and under Alinta's shelter waited an aging tractor, stoic and worn, as if it had been holding its breath for her arrival. Her fingers tightened around the key. She didn't know what she expected, answers maybe or closure, but a strange feeling rose inside her. Something here knew her, and she was meant to know it back. Up close, the tractor looked like a relic from a world that refused to let go. Rust crawled along its frame, and cobwebs clung to the gearshift like fragile flags of surrender. Yet there was something stubbornly alive about it, something purposeful. Emma reached for the metal plate near the engine and froze as her eyes traced the engraving. R. Cunningham, 1967. Her breath hitched. The note's initials suddenly sharpened into meaning. With shaking hands, she searched the tractor for whatever secret it had been guarding. When she lifted the stiff old seat, a small wooden box lay beneath it, wrapped in oilcloth like a treasure waiting to be claimed. The key slid into its lock as if it had been yearning for that moment. Inside lay a photograph of a young woman holding a newborn wrapped in the yellow blanket Emma still carried. On the back, Sarah and Emma, 3 days old. Her heart broke open. Beneath the photo was a letter, written in trembling handwriting by a man who confessed more sorrow than pride. He was her grandfather. Her mother had run, scared and stubborn. And when she died, the system kept Emma from him. He had tried to find her, tried to save something for her, tried to leave her a way home. The farm was hers. But more importantly, the truth was hers. A truth stitched together by regret, love, and an old tractor's silent oath. The lawyer's office felt nothing like the farmhouse. It smelled of paper, polished wood, and unfinished conversations. When the attorney opened the thick file bearing her grandfather's name, Emma felt history reaching for her. Maps, deeds, bank records, and letters spread across the desk like puzzle pieces she never knew she deserved. The farm, 143 acres of fields, woodlands, and a pond, was now legally hers. Her grandfather had created a trust that hid the land from bureaucratic hands until she was old enough to claim it. Taxes paid ahead. Instructions sealed away. A quiet legacy preserved for a granddaughter he couldn't raise but never forgot. Signing the paperwork felt surreal, each signature stitching her into a life she thought belonged to someone luckier, someone chosen. The lawyer placed the farmhouse keys in her palm, their cold weight grounding her in a reality she could no longer deny. Rosie drove her back to the property without filling the silence, sensing Emma was building courage breath by breath. When the truck left and Emma faced the house alone, she felt no fear, only the slow unraveling of an ache she'd carried her entire life. Opening the front door released the scent of dust, wood, and time, but beneath it all lingered something gentler, the imprint of people who had loved deeply and lost painfully. Walking through the rooms felt like stepping into a paused memory, waiting for her to press play. The smallest bedroom stopped her in her tracks. Lavender walls, children's books, a tiny bed topped with a handmade quilt. Her mother's room had been frozen in time, preserved with the tenderness of someone afraid to erase the last trace of a daughter who never returned. Emma stepped inside as if intruding upon a memory too fragile to disturb. A picture of little Sarah grinning with missing teeth rested on a dresser, its frame dusty but cherished. Sitting on the small bed, Emma imagined her grandfather pausing at the doorway every night, keeping the room just as it was, refusing to surrender hope. Over the next days, she moved through the house with growing reverence, peeling back its layers, reorganizing drawers, examining forgotten belongings, discovering photographs hidden in boxes that mapped her mother's childhood from bike rides to birthdays. Then in an equipment shed, she uncovered another metal box beneath a loose floorboard. Inside, she found photographs of herself at different ages, baby pictures, school portraits, images no one at the children's home had ever mentioned. Someone had been sending updates to Robert all along. At the bottom, she found her mother's journal, its entries shifting from teenage frustrations to the raw confessions of a young woman battling illness and refusing to let her father see her fail. The pages revealed a truth that softened Emma's grief. Her mother hadn't abandoned her. She had loved her fiercely but didn't want Emma to witness her suffering. Autumn deepened around the farmhouse as Emma poured herself into restoration. Contractors repaired roofs and plumbing while she scrubbed walls, cleared debris, and repainted rooms with colors that felt like healing. Rosie visited often, bringing homemade meals and stories about her grandfather, how he'd helped neighbors through hard winters, how he used to take long walks at sunset, how he kept a quiet kindness that people rarely recognized until they needed it. The tractor, once dead with silence, rumbled back to life after a Maplewood mechanic worked his magic. Emma drove it through the fields, the engine vibrating beneath her like a heartbeat she'd inherited. Each lap around the land made her feel grounded, tethered to people she'd thought existed only in unanswered questions. Neighbors stopped by, curious at first, then warm and welcoming as they learned who she was. One woman, Rachel, shared stories passed down from her grandmother, stories about Robert teaching her to drive, fixing her mailbox, and listening when nobody else did. Emma realized the farm wasn't just her inheritance. It was a place stitched into the memories of countless people whose lives her grandfather had touched. With winter approaching, Emma began planning her future. Online classes, a revived farm, a restored home filled with life again. The lavender bedroom became hers, its past blending seamlessly with her new beginning. For the first time, she woke up feeling claimed, not by circumstance, but by love that had waited patiently for her return. On the first evening snow dusted the fields, Emma sat on the porch wrapped in her yellow blanket, watching the sky fade into soft blues and pinks. The farm felt different now, lighter, warmer, alive again. She thought of the little girl who once believed she came from nowhere, who imagined herself forgotten and unworthy of roots. Now she knew better. She understood that love doesn't always arrive wrapped in predictable shapes or perfect timing. Sometimes it lingers in old photographs, in journals inked with regret, in the careful preservation of a lavender room untouched by time. Sometimes it waits inside a tractor carrying a message across decades. Emma breathed deeply, letting the cold air settle into her lungs like truth. She wasn't abandoned, she was protected. She wasn't unwanted, she was fiercely loved by a mother who fought her illness silently and a grandfather who carved a path through loneliness so she could one day come home. The land stretched before her, wide open and ready for whatever she built next. As the farmhouse lights